And welcome to another episode of Day at the Dude Ranch. Check this one out. What you see is me planing two boards. It once was one board. And sorry, but the footage that I had on my bandsaw didn't come out. But yeah, I actually split that on the bandsaw. They call it resawing. And if you caught the captioning there, we are making ourselves a 12-string electric semi-hollow, otherwise known as the Rhonda. So we've got here some Sitka spruce. So even though we're painting this guitar, we're actually still going to use some really pretty, really nice, good sounding wood. We're making a 12-string electric guitar. It should have a jingle jangle sound. Otherwise, why bother making a 12-string electric guitar, right? Now I planed the boards down to get them down to the size. What I'm shooting for here is just under 6 millimeter. Eventually the boards themselves will be right about 4.5, not quite 5 millimeter. But we want to take off a little bit at a time. The planer I got will chew the wood if you try to force it. So I take it down the rest of the way with the drum sander. I see right there, I'm not sure what the caliper said. It was so fast, man. Dude, you need to slow down a little bit. What the heck? But anyway, so we're running it through. We're making sure that we get it to level, and the little pencil marks there show me where I'm sanding or I'm not. So here in a moment, you'll see both boards go through. That's when you know you're done watching the sequence. It actually takes quite a while, so luckily it's been reduced for your viewing pleasure. This is my jig. This is the way I glue these flat boards together. My good old cheap Harbor Freight workbench here with the really oh, what can I say? That vise is not the best, but it works. So I just make sure that when I put the stopper board on there that everything is squared up. And now I do the real gluing. I use a lot of bright lights in my shop, so with the video sometimes it really washes some of the view, but that grain on that wood is just absolutely beautiful. It's that long straight grain that you could expect from Sitka spruce with a couple snakes going here and there. It's really awesome. So there you go. That keeps the boards from popping up. And this is actually a day and a half, the Dude Ranch. So that was the night before. I did that and then put it into clamps. Now starting the next morning, getting this thing all nice and cleaned up. Just getting some of those glue boogers off and making sure that we're nice and plain flat. I remember I said I was going to keep it a little bit big going into the glue up so that I can get it down to size the rest of the way. And here we are, doing exactly that. So now we're sanding both sides. You saw the one side was pretty oxidized, so boom, there we go. Take the patina off and get it ready for glue up, because we are going to glue this top onto a body base. Right now we're removing wood, so going any which way against the grain doesn't matter. We're trying to get it down and get it, like I said, right about 4.5 millimeters. That's a beautiful thing, mostly because we're going to be putting a finish. If I was just putting a clear coat or oil type top, I would keep it about 5 and maybe 5.5. But we're going to be putting some paint and clear coat on top of that. So this is the base. Craig wants something different. Normally the Rhonda is a single cut body. I had these bases made up a while back. I thought we were going to sell a bunch of leadies, and actually we did. This is the last one that I had. I won't be outsourcing anymore though. I really didn't like the way they did it. They did okay job, but a couple of my specs that they didn't stick with, so I'll be doing these at the Dude Ranch myself. This dude right here that's gabbing in your ears. Tracing the top, making sure everything is going to fit, and then cut it out on the bandsaw. Notice I'm staying away from the lines. That gives me a little wiggle room. For the glue up. Ta-da! There we go. So I'm just making sure, again, I've got everything centered just the way I want. I have a sense of where the neck pocket ends. because I'm going to be trimming that. Now here I'm marking where the pickups are going to be. That was the Rhonda template, by the way. You saw how it was a single cut. It's a little more roundier than the Letty. It's got a little bit more of an offset push going forward, which is what Craig wanted. He wanted that, but in a 12 string. So voila, here you are. Now what I'm doing with the screws here is not necessarily for clamping so much as for just making sure things don't wiggle, but you know, they do kind of fit a double purpose, so I'll use them. And I'm just making sure everything's nice and ready before I get the glue going. And here we go. And just making sure we got everything started so we can find those holes again since they're all covered up with glue. Voila, set it down. You see I got that little piece of sponge there. That's because again, this Sitka spruce is pretty brittle. Even though I'm going to cut that part out, I didn't want a crack to go all the way down the top there. Using some cauls and just good old-fashioned squeeze clamps. You know, I've got everything pretty level, nice and straight, nice and clean. You don't need a lot of pressure to hold this down, but I am going to use a little bit of little help from some clamps, some bars, and then here in a moment you'll see a railroad tie going down the middle just to hold the back end down a little better. Boom, there's that railroad tie, I promise you. Good old railroad tie. Yep, that's it. That's what we did. We took a walk. Now I'm coming back. And so this is all stuff that I'm doing in the afternoon now. So there's a reason for that. Because even though I, just like the afternoon before, I didn't have to clamp that top down overnight. I only really need 4 hours. It's just nice to know that once you put in the clamps, you walk away, you don't rush it. And so for me, I always like doing this stuff later in the day so I could do just that. You know, go away, TV, ice cream, whatever it is, go to bed, wake up next morning, take care of it. So here I am just lining up for truss rods. I know where my 0 fret nut is going to be. And I'm just picking out, grabbed a handful of truss rods, make sure I get the one that's the size I want. And get everything all lined up, put the rest away. And now I'm getting the router bit all set up. Notice it was unplugged. Now it's plugged in. Now because I don't want the clamps to get in the way of my routing track, I'm going to use tape here to hold it to the table. And normally I would have a square angle, but I wanted to make sure you guys could see it, so did the little Batman angle thing here. Now I'm putting a little starter hole, using kind of a plunge method here to plunge that little hole in for where I'm going to start and where I'm going to finish. And just make sure that I don't overcut. I don't know why it turned red there all of a sudden. Kind of weird. Something in my phone filter or something. Anyway, make sure that it fits real nicely. Use a little chisel to hit the square spot, and now we notice the little wrench socket is going to be a little bit big, so crowd a little extra for that. And what I did, you can't see because my big fat head's in the way. I just loosened up my fence, so I'm actually going free-handed on the router. Okay, unplug it because we're going to change the bit. Now we're going with the smaller bit for the rods. Now use graphite rods. I know some guys like using graphite beams. I don't know if they make a difference or not. I've got a 3-piece neck here with vertical grain on all 3 units. I've got 2 hard maple and then the walnut in the middle, and dual action truss rod. I don't think this neck's going to be an issue as far as shifting, but I like putting the rods in anyway. It doesn't cost that much more, just to give yourself a little bit of extra lead. Now see how I've got the fence is the same size, same setting regardless which side. So rather than switch the fence, I just switch sides that I'm routing on. Okay, put the template on there, and what I like to do, I'm not going to slice the whole thing to size. I'm just going to take care of the heel. And the reason being is I like having that heel done without the fretboard in the way. I'm just using the trim router here with the little bit to help me get it to just the right size. And like I said, that heel is done. I can put that in the guitar neck pocket and it's ready. Now, same thing with the screws for the top, how it helped line them up. That's what we're doing here with the toothpick. So I'm making sure everything is nice and square. All the center lines are on the center, and then using toothpicks to keep it from sliding, because again, that glue is very slippery, and once you start putting clamps on it, you can't see if it's sliding away on you or not. And people like their frets to be perpendicular. Now, what I didn't show on this one, because I already had it done it in the past, was I made that fretboard. That's walnut. Beautiful piece of walnut that I made on the radial arm saw, which table we're using here. See what I did with the popsicle sticks there? It's just to keep that from rattling. I just kind of wedged it in there. It's not holding it up or down, it's just keeping it from rattling side to side. And we're just taping the area on the truss rod. Don't want glue on that thing, don't want glue on the threads. So we just put a little tape. And I use lots of glue on this. And the other use for that popsicle stick. See how now it's a spreader. Interesting note here, it's something you might want to think about. I know you can get those sticks at craft stores, get a bunch of them in a bag. I like to get mine the old-fashioned way. It tastes better when you get your popsicle stick with a little frozen treat on top of it first. I don't know, to each his own, I guess. So again, just a little glue on glue action here. I'm not using a real lot. You see there's a little bit of squeeze out, but there's not going to be that much. But by doing it all square here, whatever squeeze out really doesn't matter, because on the finished neck it's not going to show, because we're going to cut all that off. Now again, I'm just making sure these things don't wiggle, so I'm wedging enough sticks in there to get it real nice and tight. Wiping off the little bit of squeeze out that's left so it doesn't stick to my table. And again, using a flat iron for cawing. I like this one. Basically 2 pieces of aluminum with tape, so it kind of fits whatever radius. And clamping it down straight to the table. So since it's going to be overnight, I don't need the table, I don't need the clamps, I don't need to worry about it. We'll go get ourselves a little frozen treat with a popsicle stick attached to it. Okay, while that sits, we're going to trim this thing. It's been sitting long enough, right? Now I'm just getting it as close as I can. A little too close on some spots, but that's okay. I'm going to fix it all with the router. So even though, like I said, when I had these outsourced, they had to seal them. So they put a seal on this wood, and I'm just going to sand it right back off anyway. So I'm not worried too much about, scraping it with the blade. As long as I'm not cutting through it, we're all good. And here we are with the sander. So now we're just going to get everything all sanded to the same plane. As you can see by some of the touches here that are offset, this body blank wasn't squared anyway, so we're fixing that now. Now some guys would use the trim router here to cut that top. You can, if it was a really hard top, that would be fine, but again, that Sitka spruce is so brittle that, the sander just does a better job. And I wanted to sand this body anyway, get that back down to raw mahogany. And now we get ready for the neck pocket. Now this neck is a little bit bigger on the on the 12 string than it is on the 6 string Letty. So the 12 string Rhonda's got a little bit thicker neck at the base. So that's why I'm, rather than just cutting that spruce out, I'm actually rerouting it with the template. And checking it. I want it to be 31 millimeters. See how I put the railroad tie on there? I don't want this thing to rock at all. Even though it's not going side to side, it can rock a little bit. And I don't want that template to rock any. The reason I'm going with 31 millimeters is we want 17 millimeters for the guitar itself, but I've got a 14 millimeter MDF template. So 14 plus 17. Looks like it's on. And just cleaning up spots that I couldn't get with the sander. You know, I am going to also put a little splice on the side there because it's not as wide as it needs to be right on that station. The inside of the pocket's perfectly fine. Now again, Sitka spruce, a little bit brittle. So I'm just doing some patches, and I'm actually using the spruce to splice in, to kind of match up with the grain. I don't have to do this. I could just use putty or any type of glue type filler if I wanted to, since we are going to paint this, but it's always good practice to try to learn how to hone your skills as far as wood patching and try to make them as invisible as possible. Now here I am, because we are actually going to be putting a binding on here. I just want to make sure that it's a little toughened up for the router. So use a little CA just to kind of harden up that wood edge a little bit. And you'll see later on I'm going to do the same thing when I do a sound hole. I'm going to be using a little CA just around where I'm going to carve for the sound hole. This cell phone and the lighting that I have in the shop kind of washes out that wood. You can't really see, but it is absolutely a beautiful piece of wood. The grains in this spruce is just amazing. Sanding, sanding, sanding. And put a little moonshine on it to clean it up. There we go. And shellac. Now I make my own shellac. You know, you can get the little crystals and mix your own alcohol in with it. This is a little less than a 1 pound cut, so it's pretty weak. Plus it's de-waxed, so I make sure I get de-waxed shellac, and that way it works really well as a filler and sealer rather than as a topping agent. So it doesn't quite polish up, but that's not what we're going to do here. There we go. Just getting it rubbed in. Please click the like and subscribe button, share, ring that bell so you can watch the next episode. Because thank you for watching this one, but that's only part 1. Come on back, watch the rest.